But we're going to start this off with NBA. And we're going to talk about the Rockets because the Rockets right now are the second best team in the West. They have the second best point differential, and they have the second best defense. This looks like a legit team right now. We're a quarter way into the NBA season, and a lot of things can change. But right now, the Rockets look fantastic. And I'm sure all of us have our own each individual reason for why they're this good. Riv, I can start off with you. What do you think is one of the main reasons? You can talk about one, then Drew can give his, and Dell's give his, and then I give mine.
Sound like the normal.
Yes.
Wow.
Okay.
But basically, what I'm saying is that you give one reason. Don't take all the reasons.
Sorry, you.
Because there's probably multiple reasons as to why they're this good.
I think we're all gonna pretty much have the same reason. I think to call them legit contenders, I won't call them that yet.
I ain't say that.
Well, I'm just like I've seen
they're
Rockets,
a legit team though.
I've seen Rockets Twitter be really excited.
Don't
about
give a
what's going
broad
on.
reason. Give a narrow-ass, direct reason why
Yes,
the
give
Rockets.
one of the reasons.
Get really narrow. Don't just say defense, because we know the defense is why they're this amazing team.
I guess I'll start with the Terra twins, of course, and Amin Thompson, Tari Eason. I think the tenacity they bring off the bench is probably the most important part of the building block of their defense. When Ime came here, they obviously were in the shit show. There was pretty much they were calling this like an AAU team. Everybody didn't really have a function or a focus to the game, I would say. Ime comes in, he completely changed the culture. You see this team give a little bit more life, particularly towards the end of last year when they go on that bit of run where they can push for a playing spot. You end up having this youth, this young team. You have these two players off the bench that are probably one of the best wing defenders in the league already. They're both extremely young. Their ability to just cause turnovers, stay on their man one-on-one, help side defenses there. Them and just pick and roll defense, them in transition offensively too. They're not the greatest shooters in the world, although Amen is shooting a pretty nice clip from the corner. But they're both really good ball handlers. They're in transition, they know where to be. They know where to pick their spots. Their defensive IQ and just where to be at and positioning is really important too. And I think those two guys have contention to be in the Sixth Man of the Year award. I think those two guys can easily make an all-defensive team. We're probably going to have a shit ton of bigs on there, but let's show some loves to the wings and stuff like that. And for them to be called untouchable about 14 or 15 games into this NBA season after, Rockets are looking for a big star, but Amin and Tari Eason were called untouchable. I think that's really important for the development. And then you got Dylan Brooks, Fred, who probably won't be on this roster in a couple years and won't be holding up starting spots. Maybe even Jabari, too. You're looking at Amin and Tari Eason as the real,
Maybe Jaylen Green.
Well, that too. That's another one. But Amin and Tari Eason are definitely two important building blocks for this team.
You didn't see him ball this past weekend. That's okay.
My bad, bro.
Solely on you.
Houston against Minnesota, he wasn't good.
I only look at the positive when it comes to Jaylen Green. And here's a positive. He's on a winning team. Now, one of the main reasons I would say for their success, I'll try and be as narrow as possible by saying this statement. How deep they are as a roster. Right now, you can run, if you're the Houston Rockets, a strong 7-8 man rotation. I say rotation where these guys are interchangeable as starters. You mentioned the twins, the Terra twins of Tari Eason and Naaman Thompson. When I spoke about them a couple of weeks back, that was the main reason why I felt as if their defense had been so great. I really don't want to highlight Ime too much because I feel like you guys can go and highlight how great and how much he impacts the defensive side of the ball. But that being said, when you look at how deep this roster is, you mentioned Dylan Brooks, you mentioned Fred, and that leads to Tari and Amen having to be guys, the first ones off the bench. But Dylan Brooks has been playing some really strong basketball this season. As a defender, Fred VanVleet has been playing pretty strong basketball. His offense is pretty inconsistent, and I feel as if that's why sometimes Jaylen Green also gets the short end of the stick, where there's the game where he gets basically taken out of the game, the Minnesota game, where he's getting nowhere near the minutes that you saw Dylan, Tari, and Amen take because they needed that level of defensive intensity. But when you have the luxury that you can have games where Jabari's not playing an extended amount of time. You can have games where Jaylen Green isn't playing an extended amount of time. You have it where your number 3 overall pick isn't even playing 12 minutes a game in Reed Shepherd. The depth of the Houston Rockets and how each individually defensively can give you such versatility, that's been one of the main reasons for their success, because right now where they rank offensive, they're 18th in offensive rating. They really remind me of last year's Orlando Magic. The Orlando Magic, essentially 1 through 5, all of them can give you high-level defense. But for the Houston Rockets right now, maybe outside of Jaylen Green, where he's not this elite defensive presence, you have legit six guys that you can trust defensively, and that includes Alperen Sengun, who's been doing a great job underneath the rim. The level of versatility that they have provided so far in this season has been one of the major keys to them being one of the best teams in the Western Conference.
That was beautiful. I will say another reason why. They're one of the best, if not the best, rebounding team in the NBA right now. When you look at offensive rebound percentage, defensive rebounding percentage, they're top 10 in both. And Sengun's the only player on this team averaging more than 10 rebounds. They do a good job collectively being able to crash the glass on both sides and winning on the margins. I feel like that's been something that's become popularized amongst many head coaches, whether it's Mazzulla or whether it's JJ Redick, is what's the little things within the game that you're able to do. And rebounding's been a big part of it. I know you touched on Amen Thompson. He's such a Swiss Army knife that I'm so happy he went to Houston, because the fact that he gets to be coached by Ime, and Ime could set him up in positions offensively and defensively where he can win, where he doesn't have to have just these very strict set of rules on defense where just cover your man and don't worry about anything else. If you see someone get beat off the dribble, you can go and help. If you see a loose ball, go and get after it. And the fact that he's able to turn that into such easy transition as well. They're one of the fastest paced teams in the NBA. I believe they rank 7th or 8th in pace. The fact that they could get out and transition, and Amen Thompson, his ability to finish through traffic, finish with multiple people in the paint. He's been one of my favorite players to watch this year. I know you mentioned the 3-point percentage too, Riv. He was, 18% last year?
It was pretty bad.
And now he's in the mid-30s, I think 33%, around that, 34%.
It's a huge improvement, believe it or not.
It is massive, and the corner three, I believe, is even better than that. So going from not even non-shooter, just someone that should not even be putting the ball, up unless it's below the rim and it's a layup last season, to this year where this is someone that if you're hitting at 33, 34% of the time in year 2, we knew that was going to need some improvement coming out of the draft, and you're giving us everything else that you bring offensively, defensively, rebounding. He's been such a fun player to watch. And then Sengun's jump too defensively as a rim protector. This is a guy that I felt like going into the season when he got that contract extension, one of my biggest questions was, if you're going to be the center for Ime and you can't protect the rim, what's really going to be your long-term outlook for a team? But he came in, of course, he's not Rudy Gobert, we're not asking him to be, but to be a plus in that department and not a complete minus has been huge for that team too. But it really just, a lot of the things you saw Ime do in Boston, that physicality, that kind of toughness that they bring, this team mentality that no one really feels like they're above the team. You got Tari and Amen Thompson, maybe they're playing the best basketball, but coming off the bench and are cool with that. I thought they were going to take this jump, but the fact that they're doing it and they're sitting at top 3 and top 4 in the Western Conference when it's this deep I agree, Drew. It's like the Magic of last year. It almost feels like a little bit thunderish with the way they're going. I mean, this is a team that's in there at the 9 seed. This is a team that looks like they could be a top 4 or 5 seed in the West. So shout out to them.
I think the vets put it all together. I think Fred VanVleet and Dylan Brooks have been huge for this team. We saw it last year. They were a competitive team. They barely missed a play-in. And now this year they've taken another leap because the vets are still there to set the standard, but everybody else has came back and they've gotten better. Even Jaylen Green with his inconsistencies, in October, he was averaging 28 points per game. Awesome. So he even gave them high level of basketball, and they were able to win games with him playing at that level. And I feel like this is how you structure a team that has a lot of young players. You have to have people that set a standard. And I think Dylan Brooks doesn't get enough credit for the standard that he sets, the competitiveness edge that he sets every single night. And of course, we're all mentioning the depth and the defense and stuff, but Alperen Sengun is basically showing that he's a true star. He's somebody that not only is an offensive hub and can lead your offense. Right now, he's in the 96th percentile in assist percentage, 25.6% assist percentage. He is one of the most gifted offensive players in basketball. And the defensive leap that he's taken, he can now block shots. He rebounds at an elite level on both ends of the floor. That is huge for the Rockets' outlook because now we don't look at the center position as a defensive liability. And Sengun right now, I don't know if you can name 3 passers better than him at the big man position. I think he's the second best big man passer in the league behind Jokic.
What about Giannis?
I think Sengun's a better passer.
Okay. Interesting. I think Giannis is a pretty great passer, but I think Sengun's pretty great. I'm not going to argue too much.
I think Giannis is right there. I think they pass the ball in different ways.
But that's why I'm also thinking about connectors, and like Lively and Hartenstein immediately come to mind, but Sengun does it at a different level.
Yeah, he's a tier above those
guys. Because he has the ball in his hands and he initiates when the Rockets need him to.
More than a connector.
Yes, agreed.
And it's unselfishness. 7 players are averaging double figures on this team. Sengun is taking a back seat from scoring. His efficiency has also been down. If you look along the lines of how he finishes at the rim, he's near the bottom. He's not finishing at the rim at a high rate right now for a big. He's finishing like 56% around the rim, which I think that number should improve for his career. He's always been around 60 to 66%, so that should get better. But it's the unselfishness on his team. Jaylen Green is still averaging the most points, and he's been inefficient. And I feel like that is the big elephant in the room, the Jaylen Green thing, because ideally his archetype is exactly what the Rockets need, because they need a creator at the guard spot, but the inconsistencies make him very hard to trust on a game-to-game basis.
It sucks because you have nights like Minnesota, but then you have nights against Philadelphia where he's shooting 60% from the field. He's getting to the free throw line. He's one of the most dominant offensive players on the court. It can be like that on a given night, but then you have the moments where he's one of the worst offensive players on the court. That's where it kind of sucks watching Jaylen Green, because you know the highs are extremely high, but the lows, which is what really stand out to you, especially when on the season you're shooting 39, 40% from the field, that's where I can understand Rockets fans and basketball fans having it out with Jaylen Green. But when he has it on, like we saw early in the season, especially in the fourth quarter, it makes it exciting to really watch the Houston Rockets. But then you also find yourself really buying into what they can be long term. And then you have the nights where Jaylen Green doesn't have it, and now we have to really rely on these secondary players to go and create, and now we have to be the best offensive team in the league to go ahead and claw out these close W's, which they've done for a majority of the season so far. That's where the responsibility gets put onto him, where Sengun has been very consistent for a majority of the season. You're just waiting on Jaylen Green to be that consistent. And nobody's saying be a 50, 40, 90 level player. You go out there and you're shooting 45% from the field, 37% from three, especially with the volume that he's taking these three-point shots. You know he can create for himself. You know he can get downhill. It's just a matter of being efficient with your opportunity.
He could get by anybody. He could get by anybody. He's one of the most athletic players in the league. I mean, his first step is crazy. Just finishing at the rim.
Sucks.
I will say, though, before you go, Riv, I'm glad you mentioned Terra and Amen Thompson being untouchable. Glad the Rockets are going this way, because the one thing about Jaylen Green is, even though he's been inconsistent, even though there's questions around him, I think it was smart to give him a contract extension, because that's a contract you will be able to move. I don't think anyone's looking at that like that's some untradeable contract. This is a guy that's still super young, in his early 20s and making less than $40 million a year. Was it 33, 34 a year?
They said RJ's contract was untradeable, and then got OG Anunoby.
And so they have tradable contracts too. If they want to go get that star, they can. But we're not breaking up these young guys that look like, they could do more than what Jaylen Green can as just an offensive player, right? You got Amen Thompson, Terra, and these dudes that feel like are going to be staples of this team. Of course, I think Sengun is in that mix as well. But I do think Jaylen Green, of course, Fred, who's on an expiring, I believe. Like, you do have a couple of vets that, although they've been great this season, if they want to make a move, they can make money match without giving up those young pieces, because Jaylen Green is still going to be valued around the league.
Yeah, and I think if you accept Fred's contract option, you can move him too. He's at about $40 million.
He's got a player or team option?
It's a player.
Oh.
No, team. Yes, team option. So that
is it 2+1?
I think it was a 1+2. No, 2+1.
It can't be 1+2.
Yeah, I'm tweaking. Well, I would say though, I don't want to keep everybody. The easy answer I feel like is to put it on Jaylen Green, is to say he's the problem for why they're the 25th ranked offense in the half court.
They're 18th offensive rating right now.
No, I'm saying the half court. In the half court, they're the 25th ranked offense. I don't think it's all on Jaylen Green. You got Jabari Smith, who's been a little bit inconsistent on
Really haven't spoken about him.
Fred VanVleet, who's also another one. He's their best playmaker, so I understand
Agreed.
why you play him. I understand why he gets as much touches as he does get, and why a lot of the offensive plays runs through him and Sengun. He's their best passer. But he's also been another guy that's inconsistent. So you have 3 of your 5 starters. And then Dylan Brooks is, he's playing well, but he's also another one that's, he gets hot, he gets cold. He's very streaky throughout his career.
He's number 1 in their point differential right now.
One thing
he's playing
about
really well.
Dylan Brooks, he gets the ball in his hands late in the game, He's shooting it.
Oh, it's going up for sure.
He's shooting it.
But you have 3 people who are kind of hot and cold and kind of inconsistent. So it's like.
So now I'm going to read you off these stats. There have been 2 lineups that the Rockets have played this season that have played over 100 possessions. The first lineup is Fred VanVleet, Jaylen Green, Dylan Brooks, Jabari Smith, and Alperen Sengun, 551 possessions. They're a 11.6 positive when they play, 113.2 offensive rating, 101.6 defensive rating.
That's pretty great.
The offense is not good with this lineup based off the offensive rating. The defense is what has been elite. Yeah. The other lineup that's over 100 possessions, it's 107 possessions compared to 551, so quite a difference. It's Fred VanVleet, Amen Thompson, Dylan Brooks, Jabari, and Sengun. That lineup is a plus 36.4, 128 offensive rating, and a 91.6 defensive
Lord
rating.
Have mercy.
Just when they swapped Jaylen Green with Amen Thompson in that lineup.
He's been crazy impactful on both sides.
That's my brother.
It's really my guy, man.
I really can't be mad about it because I really like a lot of players on the Rockets. It just so happens that the player I like the most has been the biggest issue as to why they aren't in contention legitimate for the best team in the West.
I mean, Amen's not going to take crazy threes. He's not going to have bad possessions. You know, he's going to be in the right spot. He's going to cut. He's going to get offensive rebounds. He's one of their, offensive rebounders. So it's like, and then he plays defense. Arguably the best of the team.
You mentioned rebounding.
The number one.
Men's one of the very underappreciated trade of his.
He probably has the highest vert in the league.
Yo, for real.
He's 6'7".